everybody. Welcome back to Recovery Corner. I'm your host, Candace Rose, and today I have a local Durango friend joining me on the show. Welcome, Mike Largent.
Hi. Thanks.
Hi. Today we are going to hear Mike's story of recovery, how he arrived here and like what he's doing today to sustain this lifestyle. So I'm really excited for you to share the parts of your story that I know, and then to also learn a little bit more. So my first question for you, though, is I've never really known you to identify as a person in recovery, but what's your relationship with that identity?
I don't think about it much. I do consider myself a person in recovery, but it's not how I identify.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really powerful. I stepped into recovery, sort of learning to own the identity as like an alcoholic and an addict. Through YPR, I kind of have been empowered to like change that identity to a person in recovery. But the more time I spend in recovery, the more people I meet, I think it's really empowering when we even look beyond like this behavior or refraining from a behavior and start to kind of like learn who we really are, like at our core. So I really appreciate your perspective on it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I think we're going to dig in. I introduced you, and you are from the area.
Bayfield, Colorado.
Baytucky, as we like to refer to it.
Good old Baytuck.
He's what do you call it in your show? A
B-Town boy.
B-Town boy, one of the original B-Town boys. So
oh, gee.
Shout out Bayfield, Colorado. Well, cool. So yeah, Mike, you are a person that lives an alcohol-free lifestyle. So let's learn a little bit about how you arrived at this decision. Like,
sure.
How long ago did this whole journey start?
Great question, Candace. This started like 11 years ago. I was kind of a sad sap, just mulling about, putzing about, going through life. And I wanted to change that. I knew that drinking was an issue, and I knew I'd be better off if I wasn't drinking. But I started changing without the intention of changing the behavior of drinking. So what happened was I watched this TED Talk. You may have heard of them.
Yeah, I'm aspiring to be on one. I think I've got what it takes.
She's on her way. So this TED Talk was Sean Aker. It's called The Happy Secret to Better Work. Basically, it's about positive psychology. He outlines a number of different things to do for 21 days, and it is meant to elevate your optimism and your happiness. And it did that. So, because I did that. I did the things for the 21 days. There are things like, pointing out some gratitudes, reaching out to people in your network that you're grateful for, meditation, exercise. I did these things. And then at the end, it worked. So I was more optimistic. I think, I had tried like cold turkey. I had tried just stopping time and time and time again. And it was just like really disheartening. So this kind of breathed some new life into me. And not that, hold on. I had a few, after the 21 days, I had a few more instances, a few more nights of that just like really embarrassing behavior that, is problematic.
And behavior related to your drinking.
Yeah, thank you. And at the end of those nights, I was like, okay, I need help. And so I scheduled it. It was like a week out. I drank like that whole week. I showed up to the doctor's appointment hungover. And somehow at that one doctor's appointment, the good Dr. Atwell,
Shout out Atwell,
Wonder-
Dr. Atwell.
Dr. Atwell.
Is he still practicing in the area?
I don't know.
Don't
This
know.
was in Denver,
Oh, okay.
so this was not this area.
All right.
But yeah, after that one thing, I went in there expecting him to like navigate me through how to moderate and like how to control my actions, but he was straight up just like, you can't drink.
Wow.
Deadpan, 5 syllables, you can't drink. We finished the session, about whatever. He was like, yeah, that all sounds bad. And, like it was an okay therapy session. But for whatever reason, and I think it's probably those 21 days prior and the multitude of factors that go into these things that I'm not even aware of, it clicked. And since then, it's been easy.
Wow. So this was one session
Of therapy,
that guy probably doesn't practice anymore. He probably worked himself out of a job.
right?
But wow, what a concept for all of you listening. Went to a professional,
I did.
received some advice,
Yes.
and then he acted on that advice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting. I sometimes I wonder if like, one of my brothers or like my dad or something, if they were like, you can't drink, if that would have been the same ordeal.
Yeah, I don't know, because I know for me, like just speaking from my experience, I was very rebellious, resistant.
Yeah.
And for years, people were telling me I needed to quit drinking,
Yeah.
and I didn't listen.
Right.
It
Yeah.
almost made me have to like feel like I had to prove myself. Like, no, I got this. Like,
Watch. You watch.
I'll show you.
Right. Boy, did we show them.
Yeah. Winning,
Uh-huh.
definitely. So, I mean, yeah. Prior to this, did you like? You arrived at this decision it sounds like a very personal decision. I mean, did you have other people in your life sort of alluding to this?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I am really lucky that I have such a supportive and loving and caring group of friends, because I didn't lose any. At most, some lost interest and like were harder to hang out with probably.
Mhm.
But yeah, even some who were like, I don't really like how much you drink, or we don't invite you because you're going to drink too much.
Mhm.
Even they have come around to like swoop me back in.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good that you're able to reestablish those. I mean, that can be hard, like depending on the nature of what happens. Like sometimes those bridges can be difficult to rebuild. So,
Yeah.
and that can be really isolating too when you're, in this obsessive drinking behavior, and you're destroying your relationships. And people, eventually, like everybody has their breaking point, and the fact that, can't knock them for having to like step back. But I really commend them for coming back around, because sometimes people are just over it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that, they were able to stay in your life. Definitely.
Me too. Yeah. It's huge. I don't take that for granted. That's for sure.
Well, so you seek out help. You go see this good doctor.
Uh-huh. The good Dr. Atwell.
Atwell. I was going to call him Atkin. It's not Dr. Atkins.
Nope. Like my carbs.
Yeah. So, okay, well, just to put a lens on it. So life before I mean, we didn't get into it, but it sounds like there was a lot of drinking and partying, and that was kind of your lifestyle. So then you see this doctor, and then you were 24 years old when you quit drinking. So what did life look like then were you able to just continue to like engage in those same environments with a lot of the same people, or did that shift?
This is another thing that I think is uncommon, because I could go to bars, and I could go. I'm trying to remember if I intentionally stayed away from bars. I don't think that I did. I think every drink that I saw after that was like, thank God.
Right.
Thank God I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, no idea how I developed that mindset, but it really helped.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I'm able to sit on the outside and watch other people get drunk and just appreciate that I'm not them, it definitely reaffirms the decision.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that too. I mean, I know where it goes for me, so it's like, yeah, I can be around people that have a healthy relationship with alcohol and like totally okay.
See, that's harder.
That's harder for you?
That's harder. Because, well, yeah, when someone's like, oh, this is number 2, I don't have a buzz, I'm cutting it off here. I'm like, how do you do that? Like,
what's the point?
Witchcraft. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this isn't about me today, but I will just say like something that I've realized even with my friends, and sorry friends that I might be talking about, my friends that do have healthy relationships with alcohol, like I recognize they still have some limits in their like abilities, like being uncomfortable in social situations unless there's like a social lubricant. And like, shit, dude, I've interviewed plenty of people that I never met before recording an episode of the podcast, but like can jump into these like pretty meaningful, like deep conversations with them that a lot of people like, I don't know. I think it's a cultural, societal thing that it's just embedded, like specifically alcohol.
Like if people are getting together, there's booze.
Yeah, and it helps people like come out of their shell a little bit, or they're like less inhibited.
Yeah.
So it's like even people that can have like the 2 drinks and cut themselves off, it's like in a social activity, like they still kind of need that little like,
extra
buffer to kind of like let loose. And not just that too, like people where they have a bad day or something bad happens and like their go-to is to reach for a drink, or they're celebrating something, weddings, births, graduation, whatever, and their go-to is to reach for a drink. And like this, whenever I talk about this sort of concept, I always try to be like, I hope I don't sound arrogant, but it's like learning how to experience the difficult times, celebratory times, like learning to just experience those like authentically is kind of like a gift that a lot of people don't allow themselves to experience.
I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I can fully experience those things, because like, yeah, I'm not drinking, but I might be on my phone, or I'm not drinking, but I might be shoveling food into my mouth. Like,
right.
Because I'm sober doesn't mean I'm present and the flowers are out, like it's still something that I have to work on and work for in every given moment.
That's true. Okay, my whole theory is just shut down.
Just trying to shit on your parade here, Candace.
No, I still think, I mean, yeah, like food and phones, definitely. I'm guilty of this, and I think I've been better at it too. But yeah, like it's like Pixar, it didn't happen. Yeah, we're at these like activities, weddings, whatever, family get-togethers, and it's like you're not even viewing it like in like with your naked eye. You're like viewing all of these things happening in your life like through a phone screen.
Totally.
But so I can get that. But
well, I think remembering that allows me to be with the people who are drinking, who are consuming, and I mean with in like in a bigger sense, like have that drink, dude. I need my phone. I'm also weird, uncomfortable, and fucking feeling awkward around you. So
yeah,
and like knowing that they can moderate. If they had an issue, I'd be like, I would feel other ways about it. But
yeah, well, I'm not knocking anybody. Like I think it's just a cultural norm that I'd love to see shifted. An episode I did a couple weeks back, I interviewed Chris Marshall, who owns Sands Bar in Austin, Texas, which is a bar that doesn't serve alcohol.
Oh, huh.
You can imagine, right? It's like, wait, what's the point?
What do you have
well, it's not.
You have a drink place.
So
like, why is it called a bar? It could just be like a beverage. building.
Beverage building. Yeah, I don't know. Well, the intention behind this business model isn't so much about the drinks as it is about getting people together to authentically connect. And there's live music, there's comedy, there's dancing, there's karaoke, there's like all these things that you would find at a bar, but it's like in a space, and it's not even created for people in recovery. Obviously it is appealing to people in recovery, but it's like, the sober curious, or just trying to kind of like put a different lens on like how we interact as humans together. It's like, instead of coming together for the drink,
yeah,
it's like, let's actually come together to connect and like have this experience together.
I hear you. Yeah, I like that. And I like, like it can be hard to be like, hey, we're going to sit down and enjoy each other's presence. You know what I mean? Like people don't do that, but they can connect over things like comedy or other things at the bar, like this is a really great cocktail,
Right.
That's how all of my connecting starts, is in a robot voice. I really like this cocktail. Look at comedian with his jokes.
Well, you could have a mocktail though.
Right. In this bar, it would be a mocktail.
Yeah, or a 0 proof beverage.
Ooh, haven't heard that term.
Yeah. You'll have to.
And yet, it's all that I drink.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Caffeine's got a little bit of like jet fuel in it, so. No, but it is a new concept. But yeah, that's a whole nother story that we could talk more about later. But I want to keep talking about your story though. So yeah, so life, your social circle didn't change. Like you were still like hanging out with a lot of the same people in a lot of the same places, and you just had like the mindset that you could do that.
I reckon so. Yeah. I mean, relatively, my life has been kind of, I lived here, I lived there, I lived all over the place. So like to say that my social network was the same is to say that it was relatively the same, but it changed in 6 months for other reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, so I want to talk a little bit about like, how do you sustain, and this is going to be an open-ended question, but like, how do you sustain this lifestyle? And maybe it's not intentionally sustaining a life of not drinking, but like, like, who are you now? Like back then you might've been Mike the drinker.
Sure.
But now, since finding a lifestyle free of alcohol, like.
This gives me the perfect opportunity to get on a soapbox of mine.
Okay.
I'm gonna go into this. So there's this really attractive idea that people in recovery, and I'm not a researcher, I don't know, you can correct me wherever I'm wrong, but that people who are not drinking or not using substitute it with healthy lifestyle choices. And I want to say that that's total bullshit. There's like,
maybe.
here's the difference. When I take a drink of booze, my brain has a very particular chemical reaction that says more of that.
Yeah.
When I run a mile, my brain is like, take a nap. You know what I mean? There are some other things that are like, that was nice. Now my body feels good. Like here are some mellow, happy chemicals. And they're better and they're more sustainable, but they're not like more now,
Right.
Like the alcohol was.
Yeah. I think it's dopamine that you get, like dopamine to the max.
Yeah.
With alcohol and other drugs. That's like our brain. And it almost becomes like, scientifically, it's like, because of the amounts that alcohol and drugs, the amounts of dopamine, our like whole hierarchy of needs changes. And because alcohol gives us such high amounts, it's like, this is
you
why,
want that over food.
Yeah. And this is why, like in extreme cases of addiction, like people are like not worried about paying their bills and having a place to sleep or food to eat.
Sure.
Like they're just worried about that next high.
Yeah.
Because like chemically, they're like, and our brains, sorry if I'm jumping everywhere. Our brains basically stop producing dopamine themselves when we're getting such high
bad
outside
news.
sources.
It's bad news bears.
And that's also why people struggle to stop too, because they can't like get that joy, like regular sustainable amounts of dopamine like
Yeah.
they would from eating an apple
Sure.
or sitting in the sun, you know, like some of that like we get dopamine from, but they're not even like their brain's not kicked on. So there has to be like an extended period of not utilizing substances. It's kind of like starting a car that hasn't been revved up in a long time. So it like
Okay.
needs time to kind of like turn the engine over and
Be
start
like,
producing.
Yeah, I can make dopamine.
Yeah, open
Here
the
you
factory
go.
back up. So
Sure.
so there is that, you know, when we start to talk about like a scientific like reasoning,
Yeah.
like
So you're backing what I'm saying up with some science.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah, there is science. Like addiction is not just like a moral failing. Like there is actually things that happen in our brain that kind of make this more difficult to overcome for a lot of people.
So yeah, I
But
I
not
think
you.
well,
No,
um,
I can't.
no, it was easy for me. You're right. Relatively, because I didn't want alcohol over food.
Right.
I was super lucky in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the point of like the substitution,
Mm-hmm.
I think someone who's telling you that wants to sell you their book, their story, their blog, their whatever. And that's okay. Buy their book, support them,
Right.
you know? And also like, I know I just totally dismissed it, but it's an okay way to look at it too.
No,
And
right.
it can be a motivator. Like I'm not going to run as well, or I'm not going to climb as well, or I'm not going to hike as well, fill in the blank if I drink
Mhm.
or if I use. And I think to that end, it's great.
Right.
But you asked, how do I stay sober? Like, how do I sustain this?
Yeah.
Well, after so many reaffirmations, you know, seeing like really drunk people, I didn't have to think about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so sustaining it just looks like living my life. But I can compare it a little easier to smoking cigarettes, because I smoked cigarettes, and now it is very literally like when I think about that, and it's annoying that I do, but I do. I then have to follow that thought up with, then you're going to want it all the time. Then you're going to want it all throughout the day. You're going to plan your day according to cigarettes, and you're not going to be able to run, climb, ski as well.
Oh.
And it will diminish your confidence, which I already have to like, you know what I mean?
That's surprising to me. Like you're such an outgoing, like very animated person. Which, you know, you never know what people are going through. So always be kind. I never would have like thought that you struggled.
I do.
Struggled with that.
100%. Oh yeah. It has to come from a grounded place. But
yeah. Also climbing and all these other activities you're talking about. I very much like, I don't know, identify you with these activities. Like before you and I got to know each other well, like we've had a lot of same friends, and you've always kind of been like Mountain Man Mike, or like you used to have a really bitchin' mustache, which I think the fiance is.
she doesn't like it.
She won't let you go back there.
She prefers the beard. She's like, it's magnificent, but I like the beard.
Ah, okay.
Mm-hmm. So everyone's clear on Susie's stance on my mustache.
Oh goodness, yeah. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we'll do a whole podcast on your mustache one day.
Yeah, it would make sense.
But yeah, so well, let's talk about this. And I do want to say, maybe challenge you a little bit, like with you saying people don't necessarily need to like trade one activity for another, like you know, and that could look different for a lot of people. But I think what happens there and why it's so helpful for people to find these other activities is because, I mean, if you're anything like me, like drinking consumed my life. Everything was based around drinking, like every single activity. Like it wasn't like I'm going to go for a hike and bring beer. It was like, let's drink beer and then go for a hike. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. The fun part will be the beer, and hike will be whatever.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's like whatever. We'll just see what happens, but we'll have a good idea if there's beer there.
Yeah.
But or whatever other substance it might be. So if all of your free time is like based around this one activity, like you got to find ways to fill that time. So whether that's like through physical activities and outdoor recreation or exploring art, getting creative, is like finding ways to kind of fill up that time, because you can't just sit there. Well, you could. I don't think that's very effective.
A Buddhist.
Yeah. Right.
Meditating. No, I hear you though. Like, and I think it's an amazing idea to make the decision like, this is out, this is in.
Mm-hmm.
For me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that argument, and maybe it feels different for you too, because you already had these kind of activities in place. And this is like a lot of like what you do now. And this is what I want to talk about too, because your lifestyle is pretty interesting. Maybe you're a Colorado guy. And a lot of what you do, I think, sort of embodies like a Colorado.
I am person. Colorado.
He's so Colorado. But yeah, let's kind of talk about that. And I'll just front load it. Like Mike is a big first it was mountain climber. Now what's the proper term? So mountain climbing is like hiking mountains. But now you're like a rock climber.
Yeah.
You're a theater
maker,
producer, creator, and performer.
Yeah.
And do all that stuff like outside of like your regular like day job, but these are like the things that make you. And so I want to talk a little bit about like what's that look like for you, and maybe kind of compare and contrast like what was your experience with these like recreational and theater activities while you were drinking, and does that look different now that you're not drinking, or does it feel different now that you don't drink?
Boy, I'm going to answer this the best I can, having not drank for 11 years. I don't think I would have been ready to bring the level of authenticity to my acting before I stopped drinking that I'm able to bring to it now. I don't think that I would have been able to be vulnerable enough and have the strength, both like the ego strength, and I think I nailed it, just ego strength to be vulnerable, be out of control, and be willing to do that. Before I stopped drinking, it was a bag of tricks. They were like well polished. It was very funny, very fun to watch, but it was a bag of tricks, and that only gets you so far as an actor. If you want to do anything that's going to like make people feel things that are not laughter, then other areas have to be accessed. Mm-hmm. And those, you can't shine that. You can't control that. You have to bring some vulnerability. And as far as the outdoor activities, like if we're going to break Mike up into actor and outdoor guy. I
don't mean to limit you. I know you're.
I would make to just dip into that rabbit hole. I would make the argument that I am Mike, and these are ways that Mike expresses himself.
That's a great way to illustrate that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have thought about it before. So yes, the outdoor side is like, let's see, before drinking, like while I was drinking, I had to sort of train and battle around these nights of debauchery. And, like sort of train through them sometimes, and it also was like these nights of debauchery, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but they took their toll on my confidence, my self-worth, my levels of shame. Shame was so present. It was just like on the back of my head.
Right.
So as soon as that kind of melted away, a lot more felt possible. So like right after I stopped drinking, I think is around the time that I started running the 14ers. Because I was like, I'll bet I could do that.
Running the 14ers. I just want to emphasize running the 14ers. He wasn't just going to sniff the flowers. It was
I
like
was not. I was running up them and then down them.
Yeah. I think I remember I was climbing engineer, and like I am a smoker, guilty, not proud of it, but you know, kind of like struggling up at the top, like where it gets real steep. And here comes some dude, and he's just like jogging. I think he's got weights on. This wasn't you, but like it reminded me.
I was
of
like,
you.
I don't wear weights.
No, it reminded me of you because I was like, why do people do this? Like he's just running up as fast as he can.
Yeah.
And then he gets up to the top, and I'm still hiking up to the top, and he's like running down. I'm like, did you even like take it all in? But I know, like, but that's my perspective. But I know that there are people out there that just want to kind of like challenge themselves and like challenge the mountain, you know? Yeah. Can we like, I want to explore that a little bit. Like, what is your motivation? What's the motivation from your perspective with just kind of like running up a mountain?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say that as far as taking in the landscape and enjoying that, I would make the argument that I'm going for quality over quantity. And that's part of the enjoyment of the experience. The other part, probably the larger part, is like enjoying this body that I've earned, sort of. If you see me running up a 14er, it's because I had been training and running and doing all this stuff. And on that day, I feel strong. And so I'm doing that, and that it feels good. It's like a reward for all of that boring training.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like
training, like not on a mountain, like training like in a gym or?
In a gym, on trails. And I mean, those, I've got my whole philosophy about like training and all that stuff, but showing up one day feels good for that day. And that should be motivation enough to go to do it every day. It can be. It can be. But getting there is like not easy, and it's not for everyone. And also, but I think that answers your question of like, what are you out there for? Like, why?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because again, like my perspective on being in the mountains is, and maybe it's because I'm a smoker. I'm like, I'm just gonna take my time and like stop and appreciate the view.
And you should. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, we're really lucky to live where we do.
We are.
But yeah, so no, I was just curious about that. But
well, that's changed now too. Like my sole purpose in the mountains before was me. How do I feel? How do I perform out here? But I found that like when I'd go to my friends and be like, guess what I did? No one cared. It's like 14er, 5 14ers. We know, Mike, that's like what you do, whatever.
Right.
And like, not that I did those for validation, but I realized that it's just it's not enough to get me up in the morning to do these like super self-absorbed things. So like, I would rather, and I can say this in earnest, I would rather hike a 14er with a group of friends than like run and enjoy all of my physical prowess.
Okay. So there's a little bit of sense of community that you're like in there.
100%.
Like, maybe not so much like about me, but like, let's do this with the community of people and kind of appreciate.
And my physical prowess becomes something for a contribution to that group.
Okay.
I can carry more. I can sort of guide a little bit. And I can also like sit back and like let somebody else do all that.
Well, that sort of like shift in how you're like experiencing the outdoor. Do you think that has anything to deal with like how you transitioned landscapes a little bit, so to speak, with like your choice of recreation, because you went from hiking mountains to now you're like scaling cliffs as a rock climber? I mean, and I'm not I don't have a lot of experience rock climbing, but it does seem like a really like community-based supportive sport. Like
Yeah.
you need another person there, at least one other person, probably more than one, but
Where we climb, the more the merrier,
yeah.
because you need a lot of gear,
Mhm.
and carrying that up to the crag is not fun. So the more you can spread out the load, the better. I should say like 5 or 6 is pretty great. Any more, you're kind of crowding it. But yeah, to answer your question, that's totally community based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think I don't know, maybe it's subconscious, maybe it has nothing to deal with your whole like recovery experience, but I think especially when we have like problematic drinking or problematic drug use, like we become really isolated. And I mean, who knows, I could be totally wrong, but I kind of think that like the meaning of life is like finding connections with people. Like,
Yeah.
like if we don't have connections, you know, we don't have to have like 100 friends or anything like that, but at least having like one or a couple of like really solid, healthy relationships. Like if we don't have that, like life can feel pretty like, I don't know, painful almost.
Oh yeah. There's a huge body of research that suggests that that loneliness is more dangerous than smoking cigarettes. It's so detrimental to your health that they've I think some experts, not claiming to be one, put connection and like a sense of belonging on the same rung on the hierarchy of needs as food.
Yeah.
Food and shelter.
I believe it.
So when you like take that into account, it explains why people act out of character when they've been stripped of like maybe one really, really meaningful connection, or at least one that they perceived to be really meaningful.
Right. Yeah. No, totally. I think I've experienced that, losing people. And I've also kind of like seen it in other people too, when, you know, whether it's like they lose people because of a death or just like a relationship ending, like, yeah, people act strangely.
Yeah.
For better or worse. Like,
well, imagine a person in a cage. Super fun to do. But okay, we'll take them out of the cage. Imagine there's a person, they're getting a source of food. It's just a little bit of food, you know, and then you take away that food. Person's probably going to claw and scratch and do whatever they can not to starve to death. But if someone's lonely and they're acting out of sorts, everyone's like, what are you doing, good sir? And they isolate them more. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. Oh man. We don't have enough time to get into that, but yeah, what you just said really, I think that's what we do with people that struggle with addiction in general. Like people are drinking or using drugs more often than not to like feel more of something or feel less of something. And they develop these like unhealthy behaviors that can be like hard to tolerate for a lot of people. And I don't think that we talk enough about, you know, like being compassionate towards people, or like talk about like trauma informed, like put a trauma informed lens on these discussions. So when somebody is like exhibiting these unhealthy behaviors that are hard to tolerate, like rather than like reaching in to help, like people like withdraw and they're like, I don't want anything to deal with that. Like what's wrong with you? Instead of being like, what's wrong? How can I help? You know?
Sure.
And then they become further isolated, and it just like really perpetuates that.
This is why I think what you do with the seminars, maybe is it a seminar? It's like where you
people are gonna find
she taught a thing about Narcan.
Oh, the Narcan. I was all, man, seminars. I'm like, I'm not a cult leader, I promise.
You know, where everyone wore robes and drank Kool-Aid. No.
Yeah, well, it was like a presentation, a education event, the Narcan.
You're educating people. Here's my point. I think I have to operate this way. I have to operate from the assumption that everyone's doing the best they can with what they have.
Mhm.
A lot of people are like, no. And those people with that reaction are the ones who are going to judge themselves when they act outside their own value system. But that's another tangent. So in this scenario, those people who are recoiling from the people in recovery are saying, they're not saying this. They're saying, if I reach in there, I will also be that wrapped up. What they're lacking is what you're offering. They're lacking the tools to approach that. They're doing the best they can with what they have.
Right.
This is why I don't hate them. But, I for anyone curious, like, I hope that they acquire these tools from you, from YPR, because as like people hardwired to connect, and people hardwired, a species hardwired for like love and connection, there's no like the solution to that is not a finite resource. The solution to connecting and like getting in the shit and the trench with people is not something we need to hoard.
Right.
But in order to afford it to other people, we have to have the tools and the belief and the capacity to get down there and be like, what's going on?
Right. Do you read Brene Brown?
Fuck yeah.
That just, as you're talking, I'm like, there's a video where there's like a monologue by her that talks about like getting, like crawling down in that hole and sitting with somebody and being like, how are we going to get out of here? Not like, what the fuck are you doing down there? Like, get out of the hole.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. And that is, people are so resistant though. It's hard, I think we're seeing more, improvements with it lately, but, I grew up with DARE, and I think people are learning that the just say no model doesn't work, and shaming people because of their choice to drink or use drugs, like that's not going to fix anything.
Yes. Well, and even if it's not like aggressively going into the trenches with people, even if it's not becoming like a community coach, peer coach, even if it's not dedicating all of your, a simple shift in your mindset to away from better than,
right, yeah, no, totally,
I think could just set a lot of things in the right direction.
Yeah, just shifting the narrative, like changing the paradigm around how we respond to people. Like, no, you don't have to be a coach or a therapist or anything to help. Like, all you really got to do is like help people feel more human by like by like treating them like a human,
like not avoiding eye contact.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a hard thing to do. Like, some people have a really hard time looking homeless people in the eyes.
Oh gosh, yeah. No.
It's not easy for me.
Yeah. No, it's tough. I mean, and that, that's real extreme too, when folks find themselves in situations like that, experiencing homelessness. I mean, and I think this is something a lot of people don't understand. There's so many people that just automatically want to like judge and shame and be like, use derogatory terms like that dirt bag, like they're lazy and don't want to do anything with their life. It's like, well, if we start educating people around, like,
I would say that those people are the lazy cowards.
Right. Yeah. Because they're not, they don't understand, like, it's not like people just arrive at the decision to be homeless and experiencing substance use disorder. Like, you have no idea what they went through as like children, young adults, like, I used to facilitate.
They did the best they could with what they had.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, like, our society is not really set up to, like, it is this kind of like culture around, I'm not going to say this right. I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but instead of kind of like the community surrounding the person that needs the most help, it's like, cut the dead weight and like try to like do the best that you can for yourself, and who cares about them. It's like, it'd be really nice if our culture sort of shifted around, kind of wrapping around that person that needs the help, and then like evolving together as a community, instead of just like being
Like, oh no, not it's mine. Like, I can't let any of mine out.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I help this person, I have less.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad that like there's people that work in nonprofits and there's like at least some of that. And not to say that people that don't work in nonprofits can't have that, but I see I get to be surrounded by a lot of people that are a little more kind of like proactive and forward thinking about trying to like support the whole community and not just like the elite and the strong win, like
Yeah.
trying to make sure that everybody has opportunity to have a happy life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a really big there's a really big importance placed on independence in, I would say, Western culture, but that would imply that I'm educated on the matter. There's a really big emphasis on independence, and I think people are undervaluing the value of interdependence. We get a lot more done, and we're a lot more effective working together.
Oh, right. 100%.
And doing more together.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's hard. It's harder.
Yeah.
But that's where I say that, like, those hoarding and those like afraid of scarcity, they're the scared and lazy ones.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like approaching life with a scarcity mindset. And like if we kind of approached life with an abundance mindset, like things might be a little different.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite the wormhole we're getting into.
Yeah, society.
Yeah.
And answers.
Societal norms and odd cultural behaviors.
We know, elect us.
Alexis?
Elect us?
Alexa. Elect us.
Because we know what to do.
Oh,
we have
yeah,
all the
we're
societal
running.
answers.
We're running. Yeah. Well, we don't even have to get elected because I run a cult.
Right.
And it just is. No.
Great.
Just kidding. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me. But no, I love this whole idea that we were digging into about really just like nurturing the people that are struggling the most so that we can all kind of collectively move together as a community and instead of leaving people behind. However, we are kind of running out of time, and I think that we could probably sit and talk for hours about that. But I think we are going to I'm just going to ask you one last question.
Great.
So I ask everybody, what does recovery mean to you?
To me. What does recovery mean to me? Recovery means commitment to myself. Yeah.
A commitment to yourself.
Yeah, like committing to doing X, Y, and Z and avoiding A, B, and C.
No, I haven't. I ask everybody that on the show, and I don't know that anybody's mentioned that. There's been great answers all around, but I love that. I mean, a commitment to yourself.
To myself. Yeah.
Self-love. Self-love is important.
Love yourself.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, this has been a really enlightening episode, and I really appreciate you being here. We talked a little bit about your theater, but we didn't get into it. But I want to make sure Mike's an actor, which actually I think before we close out, I just wanted to note, like you were talking about your ability to like tap into vulnerability and you're kind of like have more reach as an actor because of your sobriety.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true because depending on different roles that you play, like there's a whole range of emotions that you have to tap into, and you might not ever have explored those if you're like numbing those with alcohol.
Truth. Yep.
I guess that was just a statement.
It sure was.
I just remembered I wanted to talk about that. But
I have time. I can talk about that.
We've got a few minutes. Yeah, I mean, I know it's been a few 24 hours since you last had a drink, but you talked about feeling unhappy and your pursuit of happiness leading to this decision to quit drinking. But was that part of it though? Like, was your alcohol use like part of trying to feel like less,
Feel more? Oh.
or feel more? Like, were you seeking joy in your alcohol, or were you looking to like numb the discomfort and the unhappiness? Or
I think both, you know. I think that I drank to have a good time, and I drank to wash away bad times. And yeah, it just kind of elevated things, I think.
right.
Yeah.
Well, so then as an actor,
Mhm.
were you acting when you were still an active drinker?
I was.
You were. Do you know, like, can you like describe a difference in like your range of emotions you're able to tap into? Or like, did you discover new emotions that you could like tap into as an actor?
This falls into that category I was talking about earlier of substitution. Like, I wouldn't say that because I quit drinking, I had access to the rest of my acting ability.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that that was a catalyst, that and the positivity training to like do more training and to continue to be open to becoming a better me. Becoming a better actor is really it's parallel to becoming a better version or more full version of one's self.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. It's nothing that we're filming, or maybe we could film it. I don't know. That's up to you. But Mike and I are working together to do some fundraising, and Mike is offering his talented skills to put on some performances, which are based around your experiences in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, as we're kind of wrapping up here, just tell us a little bit about your theater production.
Sure. So Theater of the Wild was a brainchild from grad school, and I basically needed to marry my worlds because I couldn't live in both. And so the model for creation is that I do something outside that challenges me, and then I write theater about it. And it's, I would say, 98% factual, 2% made up. Mm-hmm. Some of the timelines and stuff are what we do in art is we take the world and we sort of reconfigure it to get at these wild universal human truths. And so they're true stories, but they're like that. Yeah, what? There you go.
Do you have to make that noise to move it?
That's the whole writing process.
Oh goodness, that's good to know. I think a lot of people think the writing process is around a drink. So like if they just use that.
No, they just have to use their hands and that noise.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I've been lucky enough to see Mike in full action, and he is a one-man show currently who, yeah, you don't need more. He's very entertaining and has an amazing mobile stage. What is that vehicle? It's like an old like international.
Its name is Nick Joswick.
Nick Joswick.
Yep.
All right.
It's named after one of my besties for no other reason than I like that guy. And it's a 1980 Ford F7000 single axle semi. If you see it driving down the road, it's like this short little semi truck, and off the side of it folds a climbing wall and a stage. When it's flat, it's a stage. Up here, it's a climbing wall. Crazy. Yeah. So I'm taking that down to Indian Creek to do some stand-up comedy and to do the show you saw, 1 Mile Wide. And also we're doing some fundraising, like you said, in June. Yes. In June, here in Durango,
Actually, yeah, it'll be May when this is released. So yeah, listen to the show. Come see our fundraiser. Help us get some people seeking recovery into the desert to discover their identities outside of their behaviors. It's a pretty beautiful thing. Yeah, we've talked about it with Shane Nelson on another episode, who helps curate those.
And this
adventures.
time I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
And we're gonna climb.
Yeah.
And we're gonna river things.
Yeah, river things. So the first year was just river things.
I've never rivered things.
Well, you're rivering things.
I'm gonna river so many things.
River so hard. But then, yeah, 2 days of rock climbing, which I'm even nervous about because
You should be.
I haven't rock climbed that much.
It's gonna hurt.
And
it's not gonna be fun.
It'll be safe though.
Oh, super safe.
It'll be safe.
Except for your skin. Your skin might get a little.
Okay.
Little,
it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We'll make that work, but
we'll make it work.
I'm really excited for myself and other people coming on to the trip because I think maybe not for, I don't know. You seem like you entered into it pretty bravely, but I think a lot of people have a lot of fear around a lifestyle without alcohol or drugs, or a changed relationship with alcohol and drugs. And this is kind of a way to like take that concept and materialize it, like facing their fears. Sorry. By climbing up a wall up to 40 feet in the air. I don't know. How high do you think you're going to get us off the air?
Off the ground?
Off the ground.
Shoot. There are some out there 160 feet tall.
Oh, sure.
We won't get on those.
Maybe 40 though. 40 might
40.
Be. That's still like, I mean, that's like what, a 3 or 4 story
It
building?
really depends on what the individual wants. If they get a foot up and they're like, nope, hate it, then they could come down.
Okay. Well, I'm curious to see. So yeah. So shortly after this episode airs, we will be having some fundraising going on to help support that trip and get people seeking recovery opportunities outside of traditional clinical settings, which I think can be really powerful. So I'm excited to have you be a part of that. Excited to have had you on the show. So thank you so much for your time. Let me just make sure I don't miss anything here. But yeah, okay. Oh, phone is ringing. Shut that off. This is real life. So yeah, be sure to catch us at Recovery Corner every other Wednesday. We release new episodes. And yeah, those are released every other Wednesday as early as 5 a.m. As always, here at YPR, we do recover and we are in your corner. Thank you for listening. See you next time.